Welcome Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about the day my whole world fell apart. My name is Sarah, and this is my story. Before I begin, I want you to know that what I'm about to share with you is raw, it's real, and it changed everything about who I am today. 2 years ago, I was living what I thought was a dream come true. I was a kindergarten teacher in Seattle, spending my days with finger paints and building blocks, watching little minds discover the world around them. My life wasn't fancy, but it was mine. You see, I grew up without much. My Nana raised me after my parents died when I was young, and when she passed away when I turned 18, I was completely alone. Foster care taught me one important lesson early on. The only person you can truly count on is yourself. I worked hard for everything I had. My small apartment, my old car, my teaching certificate. Nothing came easy, but I was proud of what I'd built. And honestly, I was content. I had my students, I had my best friend Rachel, and I had enough to pay my bills. That was enough for me. Then one evening at a charity event for the local children's hospital, everything changed. I met Daniel Whitmore. Now, Daniel wasn't just any man. He was wealthy, successful, the kind of man who owned half the buildings in downtown Seattle. A real estate mogul who could buy and sell entire city blocks without blinking. And somehow that night, he only had eyes for me. I'd brought some of my students' artwork to auction off for the hospital. Simple pieces, the kind that parents hang on refrigerators. But Daniel bid $15,000 on a crayon drawing of a rainbow. $15,000. Just to get my attention. And it worked. We talked for hours that night. He didn't act like the rich men you see in movies, looking down on everyone around them. He listened when I talked about my classroom, about the kids I taught, about my Nana who raised me with nothing but love and determination. He made me feel seen in a way I'd never felt before. 6 months later, we were engaged. He took me to the top of the Space Needle at sunset, got down on one knee, and asked me to be his wife. I said yes without thinking twice. I thought I'd found my person, my safe place, my home. The wedding was beautiful. Everything looked perfect in the photos. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that were already forming. Daniel's mother, Patricia, barely smiled at me all day. Every time someone congratulated us, her lips got tighter, her eyes colder. His sister, Jennifer, played her part perfectly, hugging me and calling me sister. But there was something behind her eyes that made me uncomfortable. I told myself I was imagining things, that they'd warm up to me eventually. God, I was so naive. Moving into Daniel's mansion felt like walking into a museum. Everything was marble and glass, expensive art on every wall, rooms I didn't even know the purpose of. It was so different from the cozy apartment I'd lived in, where every corner felt like home. Here, I felt like a visitor in my own house. Things started changing almost immediately. Daniel began working longer hours, taking more business trips, coming home late and leaving early. I'd wake up to empty sheets beside me more mornings than not. I tried to understand. He was a busy man building an empire. But the loneliness was heavy. Then I found out I was pregnant. 4 months into our marriage, I took that test and saw those 2 pink lines. I was terrified and excited and hopeful all at once. I thought this would bring us closer, that a baby would remind Daniel what really mattered. When I told him, he barely looked up from his phone. "That's nice, honey," he said, and then walked away to take a business call. That's nice. Like I'd told him I'd bought new curtains or tried a new recipe. Not that we were creating a life together. The pregnancy was hard. My body swelled up like I was carrying an ocean inside me. My back hurt constantly. I couldn't sleep because this little girl inside me seemed to think nighttime was party time, kicking and rolling and doing somersaults on my bladder. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the loneliness. I'd eat dinner alone at that huge dining table. I'd lie awake at night, feeling her move, wishing Daniel was there to feel it too. Whenever I tried to talk to him about baby names or what color to paint the nursery, he'd change the subject or say we'd talk about it later. Later never came. At 7 months pregnant, I found the messages. I wasn't snooping, I swear to you. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower, and I glanced at it. Just a glance. But that glance showed me everything I needed to see. Messages from a woman named Victoria. Talking about their dinner together, how much fun she'd had, how she couldn't wait to see him again. Heart emojis. Kissy faces. The kind of messages you send to someone you're involved with. My hands were shaking when I confronted him. He came out of the shower with a towel around his waist, water still dripping from his hair, and I held up his phone. I asked him who Victoria was. I asked him how long this had been going on. I asked him how he could do this to us, to our baby. And you know what he said? He didn't apologize. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. "This is exactly why I can't talk to you," he said, his voice cold as ice. "You're always suspicious. Always dramatic. Maybe if you weren't so insecure, we wouldn't have these problems." I stood there, 7 months pregnant with his child, and he made me feel like I was crazy for being hurt. The argument got worse. I was crying, my voice breaking, asking him how he could betray us like this. How he could risk our family for someone else. I wasn't yelling. I was just hurt, trying to understand how the man I married could be so cold. That's when his mother and sister arrived. I still don't know if he called them or if they just showed up, but suddenly there they were, walking into our bedroom like they owned the place. And I guess, in a way, they felt like they did. Patricia looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. Not disappointment, not concern, just hatred. "I knew from the very beginning what you were," she said, her voice dripping with poison. "A gold digger from the wrong side of town who saw an opportunity and took it. You got pregnant on purpose to trap my son." The words hit me like a physical blow. I put my hands on my belly, trying to protect my baby from the cruelty in that room. Jennifer nodded along, her fake sweetness completely gone now. "We tried to give you a chance," she said. "We really did. But you were never good enough for this family. You'll never be one of us." I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to defend me. Waiting for him to tell his mother she was wrong, to tell his sister to stop. But he just stood there, staring at me with empty eyes. Then he said the words that broke me completely. "Get out of my house." I couldn't breathe. I just stared at him, 7 months pregnant with his daughter, thrown out like trash. "Daniel, please," I whispered. "I have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem," he said. "You need to leave. Now." So I did. What else could I do? I packed one suitcase with shaking hands, grabbed my purse and car keys, and walked out of that mansion with what little dignity I had left. I had $200 in my bank account and a baby due in 2 months. That was it. That was everything I had in the world. I called Rachel from my car, sobbing so hard I could barely form words. She told me to come straight to her place, not to worry about anything else, just to drive safely and come to her. Rachel had been my friend since college. She'd been there through everything, through my Nana's death, through my first teaching job, through my wedding. She lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in the city, barely enough room for herself, but she didn't hesitate to offer me her couch. That night was the longest night of my life. I lay on Rachel's couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling my daughter moving inside me. My ankles were swollen so badly I could barely recognize them. My back was screaming with every movement. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional devastation. I kept thinking about how I was going to take care of this baby. How was I supposed to buy diapers and formula and clothes and everything else a newborn needs when I couldn't even afford my own place to live? I'd have to take maternity leave from teaching, which meant no income. I had no family, no support system beyond Rachel, and she was already struggling to make ends meet. I cried until there were no tears left. Then I cried some more. I felt my daughter kicking, rolling around inside me, completely unaware that her world was falling apart before she was even born. I whispered to her in the darkness, promising her that somehow, some way, I'd figure this out. I'd keep her safe. I'd give her everything she needed, even if I had nothing myself. The next morning, Rachel practically dragged me out the door. I had a scheduled ultrasound at Seattle General Hospital, and I'd wanted to cancel. What was the point? But Rachel insisted. "That baby needs you healthy," she said firmly. "You're going to that appointment." Dr. Lopez had been my doctor throughout the pregnancy. She was kind, patient, the type of doctor who actually listened instead of rushing you out the door. But when she started the ultrasound that morning, her smile disappeared. "Sarah," she said carefully, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I'm seeing some things that concern me. The baby's heartbeat isn't as steady as I'd like, and your fluid levels are very low. Combined with your blood pressure readings, I think you're developing severe preeclampsia." The medical terms washed over me like a wave. All I heard was dangerous and baby and serious. Dr. Lopez explained that I needed to be admitted to the hospital immediately, that this condition could become life-threatening for both me and my daughter if we didn't treat it right away. I started crying again, thinking about hospital bills I couldn't possibly afford, about being homeless and pregnant and sick all at once. How was I supposed to pay for this? I didn't even have insurance that would cover a hospital stay. Dr. Lopez held my hand and asked me about my situation. When I told her everything, about Daniel throwing me out, about having nowhere to live and no money, she didn't judge me. She didn't make me feel small or ashamed. She just nodded and said, "Let me make some calls." Within an hour, I was in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily, tracking my baby's heartbeat and my blood pressure. I felt safer there than I had in weeks, even though I was terrified of what was happening to us. That's when Mr. Harrison, a hospital administrator, came in to talk about billing and insurance. He was sorting through my paperwork, and suddenly he stopped. His eyes went wide, and he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sarah Porter," he said slowly, using my maiden name. "Did your grandmother's name happen to be Grace Porter?" My heart jumped. "Yes," I said. "She raised me. She died when I was 18. Mr. Harrison stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I need to make a phone call. This is going to sound unbelievable, but I think you need to speak with an estate attorney immediately." I was confused, exhausted, hooked up to machines, worried about my baby, and now this man was talking about attorneys. Nothing made sense. But he was already on the phone, speaking quickly to someone, glancing at me every few seconds like I might disappear. 2 hours later, a lawyer named Ms. Chun sat beside my hospital bed with a stack of papers. She introduced herself, adjusted her glasses, and said something that seemed absolutely impossible. "Your grandmother set up a trust fund in your name before she passed away. A substantial trust fund. $2.4 million, to be exact." I actually laughed. It had to be a mistake, some kind of mix-up. My Nana was a housekeeper her entire life. We lived in a small house in a working-class neighborhood. We counted every penny, shopped at thrift stores, made our groceries stretch for weeks. There was no way she had millions of dollars hidden away. But Ms. Chin pulled out documents, property records, bank statements, all with my Nana's name on them. It was real. All of it was real. She explained that my Nana had bought several small rental properties back in the 70s and 80s, in a neighborhood that nobody wanted back then. She bought them cheap with money she'd saved over years of working multiple jobs. She held on to those properties for decades, even when times were tough, even when people told her to sell. Then the neighborhood changed. What was once considered a bad area became trendy. Coffee shops and boutiques moved in. Property values skyrocketed. My Nana sold those properties one by one over the years, putting every single penny into a trust fund for me. The trust was set up to become accessible when I turned 30, or in case of a medical emergency. I was only 28, but this pregnancy complication qualified as an emergency. The money was mine. All of it. Miss Chin told me she'd been trying to find me for years. After I aged out of foster care at 18, I'd moved around a lot, working different jobs, trying to find my place in the world. The paper trail went cold. If not for this hospital admission and Mr. Harrison recognizing my name from the trust documents, I might never have known. I lay in that hospital bed, listening to the steady beep of my baby's heartbeat on the monitor, and felt my Nana's presence all around me. She'd taken care of me even after death, making sure I'd be okay when I needed it most. She'd known what it was like to struggle, to worry, to feel powerless. And she'd made sure I'd never have to feel that way again. The tears came, but they were different this time. Not despair, but gratitude mixed with grief and disbelief. My Nana had given me freedom. She'd given me choices. She'd given me power when I had none. Meanwhile, Daniel was getting a phone call of his own. See, the hospital billing department had called the insurance company to sort out my bills, and they'd mentioned settling the balance from my trust fund. Standard procedure. They had no idea what they were about to set in motion. Daniel apparently lost his mind when he heard about a trust fund. He immediately hired someone to pull public records, to investigate where this money came from. That's how he found out that the woman he'd thrown out onto the street was worth over $2 million. Rachel told me later what happened next, because word travels fast in Seattle's wealthy circles. Patricia went pale when she found out. Jennifer actually got sick. Because you see, Patricia had hired a private investigator before our wedding to check my background. They'd found my foster care history, my teaching job, my modest lifestyle. They saw exactly what they wanted to see. A poor girl with nothing trying to marry up. The investigator completely missed the trust fund because it was under my maiden name and legally sealed until I accessed it. They judged me, insulted me, and thrown me out based on assumptions that were completely wrong. On my second day in the hospital, Daniel showed up with an enormous bouquet of roses and desperation written all over his face. The nurses told me he was there, and I told them I didn't want to see him. I couldn't. Not yet. Not while I was still recovering, still processing everything. Rachel was visiting when he arrived, and she went out to handle it. I could hear her voice carrying down the hallway, fierce and protective. "You've got some nerve showing up here," she told him. "Do you know what you did to her? She's hooked up to machines right now because of the stress you caused. That baby almost died because you threw her out when she needed you most." Dr. Lopez backed Rachel up, citing patient stress and hospital policy. She refused to let him into my room. Through the window in the door, I saw him break down. Actually crying, his shoulders shaking, his face in his hands. He left a letter with the nurses before he finally left. I read that letter late that night when I couldn't sleep. Pages and pages of apologies, him blaming his family's influence, saying he loved me and had made a terrible mistake. Every single word felt empty. I remembered his face when he called me a gold digger. The coldness in his voice when he told me to get out. The way he stood there and let his mother say those horrible things to me. Money didn't change what he'd done. It just revealed who he really was. And more importantly, who I was, someone who deserved better. I spent 3 days in that hospital, getting treatment and making plans. My baby girl's heartbeat grew stronger and steadier with each passing hour. My blood pressure stabilized. The swelling in my ankles started to go down. And most importantly, my mind cleared. I got focused on what really mattered. Keeping my daughter safe and building a life we both deserved. Ms. Chun visited me again with more information, and this time it was information that gave me real power. The mansion Daniel was so proud of? Part of it was actually built on land that had been included in my Nana's original property holdings. Legally, I had rights to it. She also reminded me that I'd moved out under duress while pregnant, and as his legal wife, that mansion was still technically my home too. Everything had shifted. The power dynamic had completely flipped. I wasn't the desperate, abandoned pregnant woman anymore. I was someone with options, with resources, with the ability to fight back. Rachel brought me my laptop, and I started researching divorce attorneys. I found the best one in Seattle, a woman named Barbara Klein with a reputation for absolutely destroying men who underestimated their wives. Her consultations were expensive, but I could afford it now. That thought alone made me feel strong. While I was researching, I posted something on Instagram. Nothing about Daniel or the money or the drama. Just a photo of my Nana from years ago, her smiling in her church clothes, and a caption about how she'd sacrificed everything for me. How she'd taught me to be strong, to stand up for myself, to never let anyone make me feel less than I was worth. That post went viral. Former students reached out with messages of support. Strangers from around the world sent encouragement. Local news outlets picked up the story of the kindergarten teacher whose grandmother had secretly secured her future. It felt like the universe was giving me back some of what Daniel's family had tried to take away. My dignity, my voice, my worth. When I was released from the hospital, I didn't go back to Rachel's couch. I checked into a nice hotel, one with room service and soft sheets and space to breathe. Then I called Barbara Klein and scheduled a meeting. Barbara was exactly what I needed. Fierce, smart, and completely no-nonsense. We filed divorce papers immediately, demanding full custody of our daughter and a fair division of assets. Then we sent Daniel a legal letter explaining my property rights, including the land his mansion partially sat on. His lawyer would need to verify everything, and when they did, they'd realize I wasn't just some girl he could push around anymore. The story leaked somehow. I don't know if it was hospital staff or Daniel's business associates, or just the way information spreads in the age of social media. But suddenly everyone knew. Billionaire abandons pregnant wife, regrets it when he discovers she's rich too. The headlines were brutal. Daniel's business partners started questioning his judgment. How could they trust a man who'd treat his pregnant wife so cruelly? Patricia tried to do damage control, giving an interview where she claimed it had all been a misunderstanding, that they'd welcomed me into the family with open arms. The public didn't believe her. The comments section tore her apart. Jennifer tried to reach out directly, sending me long text messages about how sorry she was, how she'd been wrong, how she wanted to make it right. I blocked her number. Some things can't be fixed with apologies. At 34 weeks pregnant, I went into early labor. Rachel rushed me back to Seattle General, and Dr. Lopez delivered my baby girl. 5 pounds even, tiny but strong, with lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity floor. I named her Grace after my Nana. The moment they laid her on my chest, still covered in vernix and crying her little heart out, everything else faded away. Daniel didn't matter. The money didn't matter. The drama and the headlines and the betrayal, none of it mattered as much as this tiny person who depended on me for everything. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a little tuft of dark hair, and eyes that looked right into my soul. I counted her fingers over and over, kissed her forehead, whispered promises to her about the life we'd have together. Daniel found out through mutual friends that Grace had been born. He sent gifts, expensive things. Designer baby clothes that cost more than my monthly rent used to fancy toys, a bassinet that probably cost more than my first car. I returned every single item. He didn't get to buy his way into her life after what he'd done. He didn't get to pretend everything was fine just because he could afford expensive presents. The divorce was finalized when Grace was 3 months old. The judge ordered Daniel to pay child support, even though I explained I didn't need his money. Every single penny of that child support went into a separate account for Grace's future. Her college fund, her wedding someday, her first house. Whatever she needed, it would be there. Daniel requested visitation rights. He wanted to be part of her life, to be her father. Part of me wanted to refuse out of spite, to make him hurt the way he'd hurt me. But I talked to Barbara, and she helped me understand that this wasn't about punishing Daniel. It was about what was best for Grace. We arranged supervised visits. Once a month, Daniel could see his daughter for 2 hours at a child-friendly location with a court-appointed supervisor present. He'd have to prove himself trustworthy before he got anything more than that. He'd have to show up consistently, show genuine care, show that he could put Grace's needs before his own pride. I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it for Grace. Because she deserved the chance to know her father, even if he'd failed completely as a husband. Now, 6 months after Grace was born, my life looks completely different. And I mean that in the best possible way. I bought a house. Not a mansion like Daniel's, but a real home. A beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood with good schools and tree-lined streets. It has a front porch where I can sit with my coffee in the mornings, a backyard where Grace will learn to walk and play, and a nursery painted soft yellow with clouds on the ceiling. It's not fancy, but it's ours. Truly ours. I went back to teaching part-time. My school was incredibly understanding, letting me create a schedule that works around Grace's needs. 3 days a week, I'm back in my classroom with finger paints and building blocks, watching kids discover their creativity. Those kids fill my heart in a different way than Grace does, but it's just as important. Teaching reminds me who I am beyond being a mother. I also started something new, the Grace Porter Scholarship Fund for children in foster care who want to pursue teaching degrees. Named after my Nana, funded by the trust she left me, designed to give kids like I was a chance at a better future. We've already awarded 3 scholarships this year. 3 kids who aged out of the system now have hope, have support, have someone believing in them. Rachel lives 2 blocks away now. She found an apartment near my house, so she could be close to Grace, her goddaughter. We have family dinners every Sunday, just the 3 of us. We cook together, laugh together, let Grace sit in her high chair, and throw food everywhere. This is what family looks like. Not blood or marriage certificates, but people who show up for each other when it matters most. Grace is thriving. She has my Nana's eyes, these beautiful dark eyes that seem to see right through to your soul. She has a smile that lights up every room she enters. She's hitting all her milestones, growing stronger every day. I take her to the park, to baby music classes, to visit my classroom so my students can fawn over her. She's surrounded by love, by people who chose to be in her life because they want to be, not because they have to be. This is the life I was always supposed to have. Not the mansion or the misery or the family that never wanted me. But this simple, genuine happiness. This freedom to make choices based on what's right, not what I can afford. This knowledge that my daughter will never wonder if she's wanted, if she's loved, if she's enough. Last week, something happened that I want to tell you about. I ran into Daniel at the pediatrician's office. Pure coincidence. We have the same pediatrician, and our appointments overlapped. He looked different. Older somehow, tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. There were lines around his eyes that weren't there before. He saw me in the waiting room, holding Grace, and his whole face changed. "Sarah," he said quietly, approaching carefully like I might run away. "Can I see her? Please." I considered saying no. Part of me wanted to make him hurt, to refuse him this one simple thing. But Grace was awake, looking around with curious eyes, and I'm not that person. I won't use my daughter as a weapon, no matter how much someone hurt me. You can look for a minute, I said. I didn't hand her to him, just let him see her from where I sat. He knelt down to be at her level, and his eyes filled with tears. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks like you. Grace stared at him, this stranger who was technically her father, with serious eyes. She didn't smile, didn't reach for him. She just watched him with that intense baby stare that seems to see everything. I'm sorry, Daniel said, his voice breaking. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I can never make up for what I did. But I need you to know I'm sorry for everything. For not believing in you, for letting my family treat you that way, for throwing you out when you needed me most. I'm sorry for being a coward. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not even satisfaction at seeing him broken. Just emptiness where he used to be. He was a stranger who happened to share DNA with my daughter. That's all. I accept your apology, I told him, holding Grace a little closer. But we're never going to be together, Daniel. You didn't just leave me. You abandoned who I was to you when I needed you most. You showed me exactly who you are when things get hard. That's not something money can fix, and it's not something I can forget. He nodded, tears streaming down his face now, and stood up. Can I still see her? He asked. The supervised visits? Yes, I said. Because Grace deserves to know her father, even if he failed as a husband. But you'll have to earn more than that. You'll have to prove you can show up consistently, that you care about her needs more than your own comfort. I will, he promised. I swear I will. We'll see. Time will tell if he means it, or if this is just guilt talking. People ask me all the time if the money changed my life. And honestly, it helped. Of course it helped. Having financial security means I can make choices based on what's right for Grace and me, not based on what I can afford. But the money didn't save me. It just revealed the truth about who Daniel really was and who his family was. What saved me was choosing myself. Choosing my daughter. Deciding that we deserved better than people who only valued us when they thought we needed them. The real inheritance wasn't the $2.4 million. It was my Nana's strength, her wisdom, her unconditional love. That's what I'm passing down to Grace. Not money, but values. Not wealth, but worth. Daniel lost a family. I gained freedom. And in the end, that's worth more than all his billions combined. So that's my story. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening. If you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate you more than you know. Let me ask you this. Do you think I should let Daniel be more involved in Grace's life as she grows up, or should I keep my boundaries firm? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe that karma is real, if you believe that the truth always comes out eventually, if you believe that your value isn't determined by who sees it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more about my journey as a single mom and how I'm honoring my Nana's legacy. Remember, your worth doesn't come from someone else recognizing it. It comes from within. It comes from the people who loved you and believed in you, even when they're no longer here. Until next time, stay strong. Stay true to yourself. And know that you're enough, exactly as you are.